We all think we know who invented concrete, right? The Romans. Their mighty Colosseum and timeless aqueducts are monuments to their engineering genius. We see them as the undisputed masters of the ancient superstructure, the civilization that gave the world one of its most essential building materials. But what if I told you that story is missing its first chapter? What if the secret to this revolutionary material wasn't actually born in Rome? What if the real pioneers belonged to an even older civilization, and they used their invention to build the most iconic, mysterious, and enduring structures in all of human history? Today, we're not walking the streets of Rome. We're going back further to the golden sands of Egypt. We're on the hunt for a shocking secret, hidden in the mortar of the pyramids, a discovery that could prove the Egyptians beat the Romans to one of history's most important inventions by thousands of years. This isn't just a story about ancient materials. It's a journey that could fundamentally change how we see the builders of one of the world's most fascinating civilizations. Get ready, because the truth is locked in the tiny gaps between 2 million-ton stones. Okay, before we get all Indiana Jones in the sands of Giza, we have to give credit where credit's due. For centuries, the story of cement and concrete has started and ended with Rome, and for good reason. Roman engineering was a game changer, and its backbone was a material they perfected, opus cementitium, or Roman concrete. This wasn't just some simple mix of sand and glue. Around the 3rd century BC, the Romans had a breakthrough. By mixing lime with a special ingredient, they created a binder of incredible strength. That secret ingredient was pozzolana, a fine volcanic ash they found near Naples, especially around the town of Pozzuoli, which is how it got its name. When this lime and pozzolana mix was combined with water and an aggregate like stones or broken bricks, something incredible happened. Unlike earlier mortars, this Roman mixture was hydraulic. That meant it could set and harden even completely underwater. This one property changed everything. It let the Romans build things that were once impossible: massive aqueducts, huge amphitheaters like the Colosseum, and harbors that could stand up to the sea. The Pantheon in Rome, with its gigantic, unreinforced concrete dome, is still the largest of its kind in the world, a silent, breathtaking monument to Roman genius that stood for nearly 2,000 years. How did it last so long? Science has only recently figured it out. It turns out that when seawater hits Roman concrete, it triggers the growth of rare, interlocking minerals that actually make the concrete stronger over time. It's a self-healing material that in some ways is still better than our modern versions. Recent studies, including some from MIT, have revealed even more. The Romans likely used a hot mixing technique with a more reactive form of lime, creating unique white chunks called lime clasts. When tiny cracks formed, these clasts would fracture and react with water, healing the damage from the inside out. The Romans weren't just building for their time, they were building for eternity. This is the story we all know. The Romans, with their brilliant chemistry and engineering, gave the world concrete. But is it the whole story? To answer that, we have to leave the familiar arches of Rome for the sharp silhouettes piercing the Egyptian sky. The Great Pyramid of Giza. It's so big and so precise that it still baffles engineers today. Built around 2550 BC, it's made of an estimated 2.3 million stone blocks, some weighing as much as 80 tons. For centuries, the big mystery was how the ancient Egyptians cut, moved, and lifted these monster stones with such accuracy. But in that quest to understand the how, one crucial part has often been overlooked: the mortar. For decades, most experts believed the mortar in the pyramids was just a basic gypsum-based plaster, used mainly to help slide the blocks into place and fill gaps. It wasn't seen as structurally important. The sheer weight of the stones was thought to hold everything together. But as our tools got better, scientists took a closer look. They found that the Egyptians used hundreds of thousands of tons of this mortar, a wild amount for just a simple lubricant. One Egyptologist, Dennis Stocks, noted that between some blocks, the Egyptians packed limestone chips with huge dollops of mortar, which set just like modern concrete. And this is where our real investigation kicks off. Was this stuff just plaster, or was it something more? This question opens the door to a shocking possibility. If the Egyptians had developed a cement-like material, they would have done it more than 2,000 years before the Romans. This idea has fueled some pretty wild theories. The most famous is the Geopolymer theory, from French chemist Joseph Davidovits. He argues that the pyramid blocks weren't quarried and lifted at all, but were cast in place using a kind of reconstituted limestone concrete. He points to things like air bubbles and organic fibers inside the stones as proof. Mainstream Egyptology and geology have largely rejected this theory, stating that the evidence for quarried natural stone is overwhelming. But the debate keeps the question alive, fueled by the mystery of the mortar. What exactly was this stuff? And could it, in any real sense, be called cement? The answer isn't just in a chemistry lab. It forces us to rethink what cement even means and to appreciate the unique genius of Egyptian engineering. To crack this historical puzzle, we need to think like material scientists. Let's break down the evidence, starting with the big question: what was Egyptian mortar actually made of? When you put samples of the Great Pyramid's mortar under a microscope, you find it wasn't just one thing. The main type of mortar was gypsum-based. The Egyptians would heat gypsum rock, grind it to a powder, and then mix it with water to make a quick-setting plaster, often bulked up with sand. But they were also masters of lime technology. They knew how to burn limestone to create quicklime, which, when mixed with sand and water, creates a lime-based mortar. This kind of mortar hardens much more slowly, as it absorbs carbon dioxide from the air. So the Egyptians had a toolkit of different mortars, but what were they for? Most archaeologists agree the gypsum mortar acted as a lubricant and bedding material. Imagine trying to slide a multi-ton block into a perfect position. A layer of wet mortar makes that job way easier. Once set, it would fill gaps and provide some stability, but it wasn't bearing the main load. The huge, precision-cut stones did that work. This brings us to a key point. What's the difference between mortar, cement, and concrete? We often use the words interchangeably, but they mean very different things. Cement is the binder, the active ingredient. It's a powder that reacts chemically with water to set and harden. Mortar is cement plus sand. It's the glue for sticking bricks or stones together. Concrete is cement plus sand plus a coarse aggregate like gravel. It's a structural material all on its own. But the most important difference for us is hydraulic. First, to use non-hydraulics. Cement. Egyptian mortars were non-hydraulic. They harden by drying or reacting with air. They won't set underwater and are much less water resistant. Roman cement was the game changer because it was hydraulic. The pozzolana, the volcanic ash, was full of silica and alumina. These chemicals react with the lime and water to form incredibly stable, water-resistant compounds. This is the famous pozzolanic reaction, and it's the secret sauce that let the Romans build in water and create massive structures that Egyptian mortar couldn't. So, did the Egyptians invent cement? Based on the strict chemical definition, the answer is no. They didn't create a hydraulic cement that could perform a pozzolanic reaction. Their mortars, while brilliant for their purpose, were chemically simpler and functionally different from what the Romans developed 2 millennia later. This scientific consensus also largely debunks the more extreme geopolymer theory. While proponents point to interesting anomalies, multiple geological studies have concluded the pyramid blocks are natural quarried limestone, matching the geology of the nearby Tura and Giza quarries. However, just saying no and moving on would be a huge mistake. The investigation doesn't end there. It actually leads to a much more interesting conclusion. So, did the Egyptians invent cement before the Romans? If we're talking about Roman-style hydraulic cement, then no. But stopping there misses the entire point. It's like asking if a master swordsmith invented the firearm. You're judging an ancient technology by a modern definition and completely failing to appreciate the genius of the original craft. The real revelation isn't that the Egyptians failed to make Roman cement. It's that they developed the perfect technology for their specific problem. The engineering challenge of the pyramids wasn't about building underwater or spanning huge arches. The challenge was about maneuvering mind-bogglingly heavy stones with incredible precision. And for that job, their gypsum and lime mortars were the perfect solution. The gypsum mortar was a slick, fast-setting lubricant that let workers slide and adjust massive blocks with minimal friction. It was a brilliant construction aid. The lime mortars provided a durable finish that has lasted for over 4,500 years. The Egyptians weren't trying to make a material to replace stone. They were creating a material to perfect the art of building with stone. Their technology wasn't a lesser version of Roman concrete. It was a different solution for a different problem. They weren't failed concrete engineers, they were absolute masters of mortar technology, creating a system so effective that its creations are the last of the 7 wonders of the ancient world still standing. The shocking discovery, then, isn't that the Egyptians invented concrete. The shocking discovery is our own historical bias. We've been so obsessed with the story of Roman concrete that we failed to see the Egyptian achievement for what it was, a revolution in precision engineering. They didn't invent Roman cement, but they absolutely wrote the first major chapter in the long history of using chemistry to build monumental structures. This forces us to reframe how we think about ancient technology. History isn't always a straight line where one invention is just a better version of the last. Sometimes it's a story of different paths and unique solutions. The Egyptian approach was one of logistics, manpower, and a deep understanding of materials. Their mortars were perfectly adapted to the dry climate of Egypt and the unique challenges of building pyramids. Their genius was in perfecting the fit of millions of stones, and their mortar was the key to that perfection. The Roman approach, born thousands of years later, was one of chemical innovation. Surrounded by volcanic ash, they created a material that let them break free from the limits of traditional stone construction entirely. Roman concrete wasn't an improvement on Egyptian mortar. It was a complete paradigm shift. So why has the Egyptian achievement been so overlooked? Maybe because their mortar is less obvious. It's hidden in the joints, a humble servant to the magnificent stones. Roman concrete, on the other hand, is the structure. The Pantheon's dome isn't made with concrete, it is concrete. It's a bold, unmissable statement. Recognizing the distinct genius of Egyptian mortar technology enriches our view of the ancient world. It shows us that innovation comes in many forms. Creating a hydraulic binder was a world-changing leap, but so was organizing a workforce to build a mountain-sized tomb with the precision of a jeweler, using a simple but brilliant mortar to make it all possible. So, back to our original question. Did the Egyptians invent cement before the Romans? The investigation has led us to a clear answer. While they were masters of gypsum and lime mortars, they did not create the hydraulic cement that defines Roman concrete. That title still rightly belongs to the Romans, but by asking that question, we found a deeper truth. The Egyptians weren't a warm-up act for Rome. They were innovators on a parallel path, who developed exactly the technology they needed to achieve their architectural dreams with breathtaking success. Their mortar wasn't a failed experiment. It was a triumphant success in precision masonry. This journey shows that history is full of these hidden stories. The accepted narratives are often just the beginning. What other ancient technologies do you think we've completely misunderstood? Is there another historical fact you think deserves a second look? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like and subscribe for more investigations that challenge everything we think we know about the past. Thanks for watching.